is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only three people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening and welcome to Patrick Christys Tonight. People take to the streets in Dublin saying enough is enough after children were stabbed near a school. We will have all of the latest on a tinderbox of a situation. We're monitoring that one very, very closely. Also, the net migration figures are out and they are a disgrace. We're taking part in a giant mass migration Ponzi scheme that is leaving Britain on the brink. Plus, after Nella did this to Nigel last night.
But this is what I was saying to you.
Apparently you're anti-immigrants.
Who told you that?
Oh, the internet.
Well, I ask, are young people totally ignorant on immigration? Anne Widdecombe hits back at claims that Brexiteers are thick, and I speak to the man who nearly broke the internet today after making mincemeat of Kay Burley. On my sofa tonight, Alison Pearson, who is furious at the net migration numbers, Lord Bailey and Amy Nicole Turner. It's Patrick Christys Tonight, and we're going in strong. Write to me now, gbviews@gbnews.com. Your politicians have ignored you on immigration, but I won't. Unleash to me in the inbox. Twitter is @GBNews. I'll see you after your headlines with Theo.
I'm Theo Chicumba in the GB newsroom. We begin with some breaking news. Riots have broken out in Dublin after 3 children and a woman were stabbed during an attack earlier today. GB News reporter Doogie Beattie is in the city centre. Doogie, what can you tell us?
Well, running battles with the Garda Síochána, the police force here. You can see quite a heavy presence here beside me, and they have been very heavily they've been very heavy with the protesters down in here. There has been a lot of criminal damage done on shops. There is also toilets burnt, a police car burnt, but the police are coming up the street and they're forcing them up as they go, trying to retake ground, and batons are drawn, and we must say that the things through the night here are getting heavier and heavier. This all started off at about 1:30 today when a young girl was stabbed along with 2 other children and a woman, and this has been brewing in Dublin for some time. Locals in this city are very much against the massive amount of immigration that has come in here, and they are now seen to be showing their frustration.
For now, Doogie, thank you. 13 hostages held by Hamas are due to be released tomorrow. A spokesperson from the Qatar Foreign Ministry said the first group of civilians will be released at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, with the truce due to start at 7 a.m. local time. Meanwhile, the Foreign Secretary has met with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on a visit to the country. Lord Cameron said he wanted to see for himself the communities affected by last month's Hamas attacks, and he hopes that all those involved in the truce deal will make it happen. Downing Street says more measures could be introduced to curb net migration. It comes as new figures showed that legal immigration to the UK hit a new record of 745,000 in the year to December. Most estimates suggest immigration is now slowing, while the number of people leaving the UK is going up. Energy bills are expected to rise after the energy regulator announced a 5% increase to the price cap. From January, the average household will pay around £94 more over the course of a year. Ofgem says the increase is mostly driven by market instability and global events. Now on your TV, online, DAB+, radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's back to Patrick.
We are living in a giant mass migration Ponzi scheme. The government has opened the floodgates and kept them open so their growth figures look better on a spreadsheet. And we just have to accept all of the negatives. School places, GP appointments, housing crisis, cultural changes. We've just got to roll with this, have we? The net migration figures are in. Well, in the year up to June 2023, 672,000 more people are now living in the UK. That's up from 607,000 in the previous 12 months. That's the population of Manchester, plus about another 110,000. How many more houses are we building? How many new hospitals? How many new schools? Well, nowhere near enough is the answer. But where are all these people coming from as well? Well, the highest influx was from India, 253,000, then 141,000 from Nigeria, 129,000 from the EU, 89,000 from China, 55,000 from Pakistan. Remarkably, the people of Ukraine, who are fighting a war and genuinely need our asylum as well, only accounted for 35,000 in those figures. Look, these numbers are shocking, but I am waiting for them to be revised up, because it turns out that 2022's total was a monster 745,000, which was 140,000 more people than first reported. Who's doing the maths here? Diane Abbott? To put into context what a dustbin fire the government have created, David Cameron was elected in 2010 with a pledge to bring net migration below 100,000. And now, in some sort of sick joke, Dave's been welcomed back into the cabinet. I give it about a week before Tony Blair's been sucked back up from the U-bend of the public toilet at Westminster Tube Station. We also have to be honest here. The Prime Minister keeps saying he's focused on the small boats. That focus seems to be as good as a bloke with a lazy eye and a cataract staring at the small print of the optician's charts in thick fog from 100 yards away. But it's a distraction, this, isn't it? It's a distraction, the small boat stuff. It's a distraction from the legal stuff, from what we voted against consistently at every opportunity for the last however many years. We've got a man in charge here who keeps distracting us by saying he's doing everything he can to shut the back door. But meanwhile, he's left the front door wide open, the living room windows are gaping, there's a big neon sign outside saying, "Come on in." Suella Braverman's piped up, she says. Today's record numbers are a slap in the face to the British public, who have voted to control and reduce migration at every opportunity. She added, "When do we say enough is enough?" And here's straight-talking MP Danny Kruger of the New Conservatives group speaking to GB News earlier.
We took back control of our borders, but we've thrown them open, and I think the people who put us into power in 2019 are absolutely entitled to be furious about this. There are some good reasons in terms of the refugees that we've taken in over the last few years, but that doesn't account for these numbers. It's because we're taking large numbers of people on very low wages to fill vacancies in the workforce that should be filled by British workers.
Meanwhile, the new Home Secretary, James Cleverly, he's got his muzzle on now, hasn't he, on a short leash, he wrote, "This figure is not showing a significant increase from last year's figures and is largely in line with our own immigration statistics. The government remains completely committed to reducing levels of legal migration while at the same time focusing relentlessly on our priority of stopping the boats." Nobody believes that. That is the least believable thing I've heard since my missus said she still fancied me when I weighed 17.5 stone, OK? This is not a racism thing. This is a numbers thing. This is a complete and utter desecration of public trust thing. Our politicians have been an absolute shower, and our country will never, ever be the same as a result. Now, before I get the views of my panel, let me bring in Westminster's most tapped-in journo, its senior political correspondent at the Daily Express, Christys Calgie. Christys, I've got to ask you, what's in your WhatsApps today?
Well, as you can imagine, there wasn't much pleasure. There was a lot of anger. I should also report that apparently, obviously, even I can't get personal access to this, but the official WhatsApp group of Tory MPs was remarkably quiet, which is always concerning, because if they're not having chats on that platform, where are those conversations happening, and why don't they want people to see them? But in personal conversations with me, yes, there was absolute fury. I had one Red Wall MP say that those on the right are absolutely furious, and we, the Tory party, are taking the public as fools. They go on to ask, this is an MP, right? What's the point of a Tory government who can't be bothered controlling immigration? Which is a question I think a lot of voters will be asking themselves. I asked another senior party figure, I presume these figures will go down well in your area, and they replied, yeah, people are celebrating on the streets. We love a bit of uncontrolled immigration. And I also...
I believe you had one, Calgie. I believe you had one involving a bus. Is that right?
I did. This is the one. This is a Red Wall MP who mocked up this meme of the infamous Vote Leave Brexit bus. I don't know if we can see it, but they were saying that people are absolutely fuming, and the government is trotting out some bull bleep line that we've cut net immigration after last year's figures were revised upwards isn't going to cut it either.
Yeah, there we go. It's on the screen now. So this is apparently
the new Tory slogan, drafted by an MP. This year's migration figures aren't too bad, because last year's were actually much worse than we thought. It's unbelievable, really, isn't it, Patrick?
It's strong stuff. Christian, thank you very, very much, as ever. Christian Calgie there, the most tapped-in journo in the land. Let's get the thoughts of my panellists. Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, his Conservative peer Lord Bailey, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Alison, I'll start with you. You think Rishi Sunak should quit?
Yes, if you can't control your borders, the primary duty of a government and of the Prime Minister is to protect the people and to maintain your borders. And they promised, Patrick, didn't they, to bring down the overall numbers. People who voted for Brexit did not expect in 2022 and 2023 to have a population the size of Birmingham arriving over 2 years. It's completely unsustainable. The British people have been betrayed and lied to. They're still lying. That thing, as you said, that cleverly the Home Secretary said, they don't want to bring immigration down because it boosts GDP, but what they don't say is that it lowers the quality of living, the standard of living for British people, as you said, schools, hospitals, transport. Everything is going to pot, and they are allowing more and more people to come in. We voted for an Australian point-based system, which would have very high level of earnings and qualifications for people to come in, hard-working people who would boost, who would give taxes and would not be a sponge on the services, which is what is happening now. I am absolutely furious. The Conservative Party is dead to me. It is dead to millions of Conservative voters. I've said to Sean they're going to get fewer than 100 MPs next year, if they're lucky.
All right, Sean, I'll come back to you on that. But before that, Amy, I believe you have a radically different view.
I know. I saw you look at me when Alison said the word sponge, because I see it quite differently, because you're talking about, what's the number? 700,000? You're talking about 700,000 record numbers of taxpayers. We're talking about in-work visas. We're talking about care workers. So, for example, when I was caring for my grandmother who died last year, all the carers that came in were from Nigeria. These are roles that we can't fill, so we're filling them with people from overseas who are contributing, and there's a theyreshold, a wage threshold, which is around £30,000, which means they definitely don't take more than they put in.
No, they've lowered the wage threshold. People can come in who earn £16,000 a year. That is true. That is true.
There's an issue with dependence as well, I think.
No, they can bring in their families, but if you're coming from India to work as a doctor to prop up our NHS, I think the least we could do is say you can bring your wife and kids. Like all the sectors that you mentioned depend on migrant workers.
They don't.
Tell me how they don't, then.
There's two things to say, right? This country was built on immigration, but to a certain level. And there's a point where too much immigration costs you. And if you come with your wife, your children, you have to earn an awful lot of money before you are not costing the public purse. That's a fact. It's a material fact. But the deeper thing is this. We are now approaching the point where our population is bigger than our income, and that is reflected in the huge amount of money we spend on public services, and which part of the public services are under the greatest pressure. And what we've seen in the last 30 years in this country, we've become drunk on on cheap imported labour. And what that's done, it's worked for big corporates because they can employ people at a rock bottom level. But what it has meant, it's meant that British workers can't compete with price because they have bigger bills, they have to pay more tax, they just can't compete with price. But the real political problem is this. We have arrived at a point very early on that if you talk about immigration, you're just accused of being racist.
Absolutely.
Immigration affects immigrants as well because it's them who loses jobs because there's only a certain amount of jobs. And someone needs to explain to me, in particular, why is it that an immigrant can do a particular job, but someone who's based in Britain can't?
But there are massive vacancies in the areas such as health and care.
Yes, because now... But why we have massive vacancies is because we have so much cheap labour, we don't have to pay decent wages to fill those jobs. If we didn't have so much cheap labour, those jobs would be worth more money and more people would do them.
Amy, you say that it's all... Of course, we need care workers and doctors and nurses and so on, but hundreds of thousands of this figure are students, and it's a complete scam. They come in as mature students. They can bring hordes of dependents with them, who, by the way, I've been finding out this week, are using food banks intended for needy British people. After they've completed their degree, they can stay on for 2 years, get any job, then they apply for a work visa, and then they're quids in and they're staying here, Patrick. And that's why the figures are going absolutely up massively.
The problem is the public perception of immigration, which all three of you have highlighted, seeing immigration as a negative, when it has been proven over decades that it is a positive.
Hold on. But this is the point.
So many people.
It's not the same as it used to be.
All three of you getting your knickers in a twist. It's absolutely fine.
That simply isn't true. This country was built on immigration, as I said. I am the son of immigrants, so I don't see immigration in a negative point. But the point I made was at a particular level. And there's a strong argument that we've long passed that level. And there's two things. Firstly, we need a Home Office that actually looks at who's coming here and interpret things properly. We have a clause 51 that's been underinterpreted, so it's filling up. If you interpret it properly, it means we can deal with economic migrants. We already have the rules.
I think my final point would just be that too much immigration is far more beneficial than too little immigration. If all the immigrant workers left tomorrow, our entire society would crumble.
What about social cohesion?
Who would do the jobs? Who would pick the fruit? Who would do the farming? Who would work in the care homes?
Now this is an interesting point, because that is the argument, for the level of immigration.
I can answer that for you.
Not this level of immigration.
Do you want the answer?
I'd love it.
The record amount of people we have in this country who are economically inactive, they could do.
Oh, but they're stuck on the waiting list.
If you're a young person,
why are they economically inactive?
If you're a young person in this country, one of the key features that changed from my being a young person to now is young people can't get jobs like they used to. Let's employ those young people before.
Why don't you make the jobs work for people then first, rather than blaming the people?
A point there. Now, we're going to be having a discussion about this a little bit later on in the show. It's about integration as well, because in all of these numbers, right, what really winds me up is that people get bogged down, I think you have to a bit initially, with just the basic figures. But there's always a story behind these figures as well. And that, I think, Alison, you were highlighting there, which is what about social cohesion?
Yeah, absolutely. And Sean's right. 50s, 60s, 70s, we saw waves of immigration coming in. There was time for people to integrate. Now, it's just so many people coming in. Nobody thinks you can integrate 1.2 million people every 2 years. It's going to be 15 Birminghams, Patrick, by 2040. Nobody can integrate that. You are going to fuel tension and resentment because people are going to see their communities changed overnight, pressure on public services, and
But that's something which government intervention could help with. They could help with language services, they could help with integration, but they don't.
Not at that scale,
They fail to do it.
Not at that scale.
Right, OK, look, we're off to an absolute flyer. As everyone will imagine, this story is going to keep coming up tonight in a variety of different angles on it. We really want to drill down on it because, in my view, it affects every single walk of life. So thank you very much for a flying start. But I do want to get the latest now out from Dublin because the police have blamed, and I'm quoting now, a complete hooligan lunatic faction driven by far-right ideology for violent protests that have broken out just hours after a man stabbed a woman and 3 young children outside a school in Ireland's capital city. Protesters have let off flares, attacked officers with fireworks, and they've set a car on fire as riot police attempt to hold back the crowd from the city centre. You can have a look.
Nah, lads, one of the Guardians won't get seriously injured. This is horrible.
Yeah, just a little bit more additional context as to how we've ended up there. A 5-year-old girl and a woman in her 30s have been seriously injured and 3 other people hurt. That was after a knife attack in Dublin city centre. So, lots of unconfirmed rumours flying around as well. But coming up, we'll bring you the updates on that as we get it, but coming up, with ousted Home Secretary Suella Braverman hitting back against the pressure on community cohesion due to spiralling net migration, should we be worried about integration in today's Britain? Deputy UKIP leader Rebecca Jane goes up against immigration lawyer Harjap Singh Bangal. That'll get fiery. Plus, next in The Clash, social commentator Joanna Jarju goes head-to-head with Reform Party spokesman Rupert Lowe in 3 short minutes' time. Why? Well, I think the young are completely ignorant on immigration. Just ask Nella.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Former Tory Minister Anne Widdecombe coming up, but first, it's time for the clash. Now, after these absolutely astonishing new figures revealed that net migration hit a record high of 750,000 last year, Rishi Sunak has been forced to admit that the number of people coming into the UK is far too high. Well, I mean, anyone else could have told him that. Meanwhile, over in the I'm a Celeb jungle, the TikTok star that nobody's ever heard of, Nella Rose, launched a blistering attack on our Brexit hero Nigel Farage. His heinous crime, simply wanting to bring Britain's rampant migration under control. Watch.
This is what I was saying to you.
Apparently you're anti-immigrants.
Who told you that?
Oh, the internet.
Well, there we are, then it must be true. Anti-immigrant, right? No, all I've said is we cannot go on with the numbers coming to Britain that are coming. Do you know why?
I'm one of the numbers.
Oh, right, so that's it then. So should it be 5 million a year, 10 million?
Question,
no,
right?
you don't seem to understand.
Nigel, hang on.
Those immigrants that are coming in.
And hang on.
Had you have been in power a bit later...
So long about immigrants.
So, tonight I'm asking, is Nella's outburst proof that young people don't have a clue about immigration? Let me know your thoughts. GBviews at gbnews.com. Tweet me at GBnews, and while you're there, go and vote in our poll. I'll bring you the results very shortly. But to debate this now, I'm joined by the social commentator, Joanna Jarju, and Reform Party spokesperson, Rupert Lowe. Both of you, thank you very much. Ladies first, Joanna, do you think that the young people are just completely ignorant when it comes to the realities of mass migration?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, in terms of watching the episode with Nella Rose, I think her delivery was definitely quite poor in the way that she articulated herself. But actually, if you listen closely, some of the rebuttals that she had to Nigel's claims was, things like, well, it's because the NHS is underfunded. That's one of the reasons why, our public services are struggling at the rate of migration. I think that this is something that's a much wider issue that we have to look at in a kind of holistic way. When we talk about the levels of migration, it's not just about the numbers. I mean, I've just been listening to a programme when you've been talking about net migration. We left the European Union, yet we still needed people from all around the world. And these are legal people, not even illegal people. And I think that in terms of it being young people, most people these days, whether you're young or old, tend to get your news from the internet. Most people with a Twitter account, whether you follow GBNews or anywhere else.
But that's a really key point. And Rupert, I'll throw that over to you, because to be able to lob out what Nella did, which was to say, essentially, why do all black people hate you, and then say, well, the internet tells me they do. I mean, that literally is my concern about whether or not that's the level of debate or understanding amongst the youth of today, Rupert.
Well, Patrick, good evening. I haven't actually watched too much of I'm a Celebrity. It's not my favourite show, but I have to say the bit I have watched, it appears to me that Nella is always on transmit and very rarely on receive. And, in any ancient society, the elder people, and she's only 26 as far as I understand it, actually their wisdom and their experience is respected usually by most ancient civilizations that have basically gone on to develop properly. I think the problem today is, as Joanna just said, the internet and the availability of so much information has meant that a lot of young people don't have the grounding in history or the knowledge of various sort of in-depth knowledge that's required because their attention span is so short. Now, it should be a young person's world now. They should be taking a lot more interest in politics, and hopefully Joanna can spend her time encouraging them to do that. But I personally think she needs to listen a little bit more. Okay. Clearly, she hasn't got the knowledge that you'd expect to have coming from experience. I've read Joanna's comment. She doesn't think anybody over 70 should have a vote, which is quite extraordinary. That's ageist in itself. And the problem is that they're all poisoned by a lot of these sort of ancient monopolies like the BBC that drip poison into the bloodstream of Britain. So they can't tell what's true and what's not.
OK, we get it. I'll come back to you, Rupert. I'll come back to you. Lots of strong stuff there. Lots of strong stuff. Joanna, I'll get you to come back to that, but I also just want to ask, you know, that thing that stood out for me with Nella as well was when she says, well, I'm one of those numbers. And you think, right, fine, but Nigel was trying to get her to put a figure on, well, how many's too many? How much can we cope with? And it's clear that she never actually really thought about that. And I worry that that's the case for a lot of young people. They go, I'm pro-immigration, yeah, but think about some elements of it, you know?
Well, I think that more so from what I saw from the clip. And in fact, actually, let me respond to, I guess, the attack that's just been given. I think you've actually just proved my point that, you know, some people really do just look at sound bites and headlines, and it really isn't about age, because clearly what you're referring to about me saying things about older people voting, you clearly didn't go and watch the episode of the topic that I was talking about. You obviously went on a random article or maybe on social media and read a headline. So it just shows that actually it's not about, you know, whether Nella is old or young. Clearly other people go on the internet and they're also very misinformed. But I'll come back to your question as well. Well, I think that in terms of immigration and in terms of the actual comment that was made, I think Nigel was also trying to defend himself. And I think that, you know, Nella wasn't actually far off, because when you look at Nigel's branding and the things that he talks about the most, it is about immigration. And this isn't even about young or old, because there was another campmate who had a similar conversation with Nigel a couple of nights ago, talking about his breaking point poster in the Brexit debate. So he is branded as that. And it's not just Nella, because she's young, who has that opinion of him. It's also other people from other generations as well.
OK. Rupert,
Patrick, can I just say on immigration, it is not racist to have concerns about immigration, which is clearly out of control. And at the end of the day, immigration in itself is a good thing, but it has to be targeted immigration, and it has to basically contribute to our society here. And
I get that, but Rupert, I just want to get you on this, because we're a bit pressed for time, right? Which is that I think when some people in the younger generation are confronted by questions like, right, do you think that everybody coming from a certain part of the world might share your progressive attitudes towards women or to gay rights, for example? It's almost like they very often haven't thought about that, and I'm concerned that someone's thrown a blanket over vast swathes of the younger generation and told them, you know, mass immigration good and anything else is evil, Rupert.
Well, you've got it, Patrick. You've got it with climate change. They're being brainwashed on climate change. They're being brainwashed. They were brainwashed over COVID. They've been brainwashed over diversity and inclusion. They're being brainwashed over unconscious bias. I mean, there's so much rubbish now basically circulating amongst all of our media channels, and a lot of our, as I say, monopolistic, you know, operations like the BBC that should be defunded. That people, the young people, and I think, Joanna, you're only 29 as far as I could see when I had a look at your profile. I mean, you're hardly...
Really feel a woman's age on air, to be fair, Rupert. It's not the most tactful thing you've ever done.
He's already tried to out me with other stuff, so at least it's accurate about one thing.
At the end of the day, society should be a blend of old and young. There should be respect from both. And people should listen to each other and try and get to the truth. That's where we should go.
Can I just say, I will really hope to get you both back on, either together or separately, in future, and continue a discussion as well. You know, look, it's a really good clash to get us going. So, Joanna, thank you very, very much. Joanna Jarji there, a Reform Party spokesperson, Rupert Lowe, who doesn't look a day over 92. So, who do you agree with? All right, after TikTok star Nella Rose clashes with Nigel Farage in the jungle, are young people ignorant on the issue of immigration? Well, we're on Twitter now, and Raheem says the problem is younger people view mass migration exclusively through a narrow lens. Their lives are far removed from the awful consequences of uncontrolled migration. Ben on Twitter says, yes, they are ignorant, but they aren't taught to think for themselves anymore. Anyway, we're all naive when we are young. Elliot says, it's not just young people ignorant about immigration. Rishi Sunak has lost control of our borders as well. Look, your verdict is in. Wow, 97% of you agree that the young are ignorant about migration. 3% of you think they are not. Well, the way things are going, they might not be that ignorant about it for too long. And I think we'll see, won't we, whether or not you know, the ideology that many of them claim to adhere to, whether or not they enjoy living in that. Maybe they will. Maybe they will. But coming up, with a right-wing Donald Trump lookalike winning the Dutch election on a platform of, and yeah, this is actually his platform, genuinely, banning mosques and Qurans. Could this phenomenon spread across Europe as anger over uncontrolled immigration continues to build? Former Tory minister and Brussels MEP Anne Widdecombe offers her unrivalled insight. That's soon. But first, as former Home Secretary Suella Braverman bemoans the pressure on community cohesion due to the booming migration figures, but also, crucially, what they show about where people are coming from, OK, and move away from the EU and to other parts of the world, is it fair to be worried about integration? Immigration lawyer Harjap Singh Bangal doesn't think so, but Deputy UKIP leader Rebecca Jane will take him on. Don't go anywhere.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only three people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Look, we're keeping a very close eye on what's going on in Dublin, in Ireland. Riots on the streets there after multiple people, including children, stabbed. So we'll keep you updated. But now, as discussed, record net migration figures were released earlier today, triggering fears about how the country absorbs so many new arrivals. So, especially considering people are coming from in greater numbers, different parts of the world other than mainland Europe. Reacting, former Home Secretary Suella Braverman said, the pressure on housing, the NHS, schools, wages, community cohesion, it's unsustainable. When do we say enough is enough? When it comes to community cohesion, Braverman is also on record saying, famously, multiculturalism has failed. Well, I think this is quite important for a bit of context now. So the highest influx of immigrants into this country in the latest batch of figures was from India at 253,000, then 141,000 from Nigeria, 89,000 from China and 55,000 from Pakistan. Well, we're going to have another debate on this now. I'm joined by Deputy UKIP leader Rebecca Jane and immigration lawyer Harjap Singh Bangal. Both of you, thank you very, very much. So, Rebecca, always ladies first. When you look at those numbers and potentially the areas of the world where people are coming from, do you think that makes integration an issue, any more of an issue than it otherwise was?
I do think it makes it an issue, and I do think it is something that we need to be concerning ourselves with. You know, it's something that's incredibly underplayed. And I definitely feel like it is failing. You know, I don't disagree with anything, actually, that Suella says, which is quite strange for me. I think it's a great shame at the position that she has been put in and the fact that she's no longer with the Conservative Party in her position. It has failed. You know, we do need to get a grip on this. We do need to do something about it. Our systems are completely overwhelmed, and yet nobody is actually doing anything about it, and it baffles my brain.
Harjap, I'll throw it over to you. You know, is it unfair, do you think? Because the reason why we're having this discussion is because, obviously post-Brexit now, we are seeing a greater influx of people in these net migration figures from places that are non-European. The theory there would be that maybe we have more in common as Brits with people in mainland Europe than we do from other parts of the world. Is that just wrong? Is that unfair?
Well, the whole idea was that we would not allow European freedom movement of working because the British people were supposed to integrate as such and take up these jobs. And the fact is, for over 7 years, that hasn't happened, especially if you look in the health and care sector, where there's still 165,000 vacancies that are primarily, and the vacancies are being filled up by this huge rise in immigration. So these visas that have been granted are people coming to work here. In fact, asylum seekers only made up about 50,000.
They are. Can I just? Do you mind? Sorry, yeah. I just want to keep this quite disciplined because we are talking a lot about immigration in this show. Now, the real bit I want to zone in on this bit, Harjap, is about the potential for social. The potential for social cohesion, that idea that maybe integration won't work so well. You look at these numbers, you see where people are coming from. Do you think there is a risk of a lack of integration there?
Well, Indians, if we take Indians and Pakistanis and Nigerians, they've been coming here since the 1960s, including Suella's parents, Rishi Sunak's parents, Priti Patel's parents, Sajid Javid's parents. So if you look at them, they're a product of multiculturalism. And could you say they've failed? Well, some people, I regularly say that they've failed. But the fact is they haven't failed to integrate. They've gone through the British system. They've gone to unis. They've contributed to society, allegedly. And the fact is there are areas where people and communities are gathered. So you get areas such as in Birmingham and Bradford and Manchester and Southall. But equally, they're tourist attractions too and touristy stuff too. And I wouldn't say they place an extra burden in them communities. It's just where people prefer to live. So that you'll find Indians or people from Indian origin all over the UK, from Scotland to Southampton.
OK, yeah, so that's hard. So, Rebecca, what do you make of that then? That we've got nothing to worry about when it comes to integration. Our quotes unquote British societal norms will remain intact despite some of these numbers.
But that's not what is actually happening, is it? You know, in Britain today, there's nothing more unpopular than to actually just be British. And we are expected to integrate every single culture that comes here. And, you know, to a certain extent, absolutely so. But actually, the most unpopular culture of all is being British. And why is that? Why are we demonised for even saying that? Because this is the land in which we live. So many people want to come here. It's such a brilliant place. But yet we're now expected to turn it into this multicultural epicenter of the world. Like, there's a lot of great things about being British, but today it's almost becoming unpopular.
Rebecca, what bit of British culture or bits of British cultural society are you concerned that we'll lose?
The bits that we will lose, obviously, I think that our whole heritage, our whole, you know, we are still apologising for obviously slavery, and we are still expected to apologise for it for years upon years upon years to come. You know, we don't ever get to say about anything that is actually good to be from Britain. It doesn't feel anymore, you know, and I don't think that there's anything that is more unpopular. Okay.
Very quickly, because I think that's a really good point for me to just very quickly give Harjab the final say on this, which is, I suppose, Harjab, if we create a country full of people who don't have any kind of shared history, that might be a concern for people about how we move forward.
Well, if we look at a lot of the countries where people are coming from, we do have a shared history. Britain was actually in India for 300 years. So the Indian laws are modelled on British laws. They drive on the same side of the road. The court system is the same, the High Court and the Supreme Court and everything like this. The traffic rules are the same, although they might not be adhered to. The whole legal system is exactly based on the British system. The roads, the railways are made by the British. And I can tell you, I don't think people are ashamed to be British, regardless of the colour. I love being British. I'm born in Romford. I grew up between Dagenham and Tilbury. You know, I went to school. I was born and bred in Essex. My Cockney rhyming slang is brilliant. I wear a whistle to work. So there you go. I'm proud. And Britain has the best human rights record in the world. Britain is a leader in everything, in the service industry. Brilliant. Proud to be British.
Look, both of you, thank you very much. I am fascinated by this discussion, and I think it's going to rear its head quite a lot going forward in one way or the other. So both of you, thank you very much. That is the Deputy Leader of UKIP, Rebecca Jane, and immigration lawyer Harjab Singh Bangal. I do want to hear from you in the inbox. When I come back, I'll go to that inbox because it is absolutely flying. GBviews at gbnews.com. But coming up, with British soldiers found to be living in rat-infested porta cabins, while woke activists remain uncharacteristically silent, do we care more about looking after people who come here illegally? So it's not even the legal people now, the illegal people, than our own countrymen, people who will fight and die for Britain. I'll explain why I think we need to do far more very soon. But next, as Holland has elected a right-wing agitator, to say the least, by the way, running on a manifesto that bans mosques and Qurans, well, should we be surprised by the shift to the right that is now sweeping across Europe? Former Westminster Minister and Brussels MEP Anne Widdecombe beams in to offer her unique political analysis, and she's going to answer the question as well of, are Brexiteers thick? Because a new study appears to suggest that they are. I'll see you in a sec.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've got a treat coming your way shortly because Israeli government spokesman Eylon Levy responds to Kay Burley's shocking, allegedly anti-Israel comments soon. I mean, he made mincemeat of her earlier on. He also kicks off about Gary Lineker and Owen Jones. So, yeah, buckle up. But first, it's time for former Tory Minister Anne Widdecombe and a, well, right-wing might be a bit of an understatement, candidate known as the Dutch Donald Trump, who wants to ban mosques, has secured a huge election win that has sent shockwaves across Europe. Here's Geert Wilders celebrating his Freedom Party's historic victory in the Netherlands last night.
But a very pleasant result, of course. By far the largest party in the Dutch political establishment. So I'm very proud. At the same time, it comes with a lot of responsibility. People expect our agenda of hope, tougher asylum and immigration policy, the people getting more money to pay for their utilities and groceries.
Well, I mean, the fact is the Dutch voted for him, but Wilders' politics are causing outrage beyond Holland, with his party's manifesto calling for a ban on Islamic schools, Qurans and mosques. He's also the man who, back in 2017, referred to, and, you know, this is highly offensive, Dutch Moroccans as, quotes, scum. Well, now it goes without saying these policies are far more extreme than anything I'd be comfortable voting for. But, Anne, should we really be surprised by the Dutch election results, considering, you know, what we're seeing across Europe, maybe with growing immigration, legal and illegal? Your thoughts?
Well, I think that once you extend tolerance to a point where you just accept anything, then inevitably you end up, in the end, with a reaction of intolerance. And this is a very, very intolerant agenda, and one which sits very oddly in the EU. So I'm going to be interested to watch that. Now, of course, we've already had the French for many, many years now, preventing the jihad. Sorry, not the jihad, what am I talking about? Preventing the hijab being worn in public, preventing the burqa being worn, the full burqa. Now, they have done that for a long time. This is going hugely far. It is effectively saying to people, you can't practice your religion. And that I cannot see as being consistent with any sort of human rights at all.
I don't really see how he does that. I can see maybe Islamic schools, because I can, you know, you maybe would do some kind of blanket thing on religious schools. I mean, I still think that's difficult, by the way. But, I mean, banning the Quran, it's a religious book, and it's, I imagine, everywhere. I must say I do feel uncomfortable about the idea of banning mosques, because then I think about, well, or I'll just think exactly about how I would feel if someone wants to ban churches. You know, and I think that's, you can't. I don't know if in practice he's going to be able to do it, but he's probably going to give it a go. And could this be the end of the EU?
Oh, I don't think it's going to be the end of the EU. I don't see anything as dramatic as that, but I certainly think it will promote enormous tensions within the EU. After all, this is a democratically elected government taking a line that I don't think anybody else is going to agree with when it goes that far. As you rightly say, you know, banning Qurans is like trying to ban the Bible. And even in Muslim countries, if you have your Bible in private, there isn't an issue about it. So it's going too far. I think he knows that it's going too far, but what he is doing is saying, you know, time to fight back. That's effectively what he's saying.
Yeah, and amazingly as well, a lot of younger people voted for him as well, which I think says a lot. And for a lot of people out there complaining about this guy now, I think they maybe have to look themselves in the mirror and wonder whether or not some of the decisions and policies that they've put forward have actually created this situation. But we're talking a bit about the EU there, because a scientific study published by a Remain voting academic at the University of Bath was found to discover that the lower your cognitive ability, the more likely you were to vote for Brexit, which basically says clever people voted Remain and thick people voted Leave. Anne, your views?
To be fair, and I don't really feel very fair to him, but to be fair, if you look at the detail, it is said that there is no causal flow. That is to say that being thick doesn't, you know, make you vote Brexit. But it is the most extraordinary document. I mean, we can all think, you know, of academics, very, very clever people who voted to Leave. It is a bit of a nonsense, but it's very, very typical of Remain propaganda. They still can't face one very simple fact. They lost.
Yeah, but I mean, initially it was you believed a lie that was funded by Russia. All of this stuff, and now, I mean, seriously, still, they're going, right, well, that wasn't true, so you're just thick. And you think, get over it.
Yeah, get over it is exactly it. As I said, they've lost. They've never got over that. They believed that they had a God-given right to win. Cameron believed that. And he lied and lied and lied about Project Fear, and this man is now back as Foreign Secretary. No, I mean, they're never going to stop moaning, but let them moan on while we get on with our trade deals and making the most of it.
I think the only thing I think the British public were, or the Brexiteers were, quotes unquote, a bit thick about was to assume that a load of politicians would actually enact what they'd voted for, because time and time again we see that doesn't happen. No offence to you, Anne, I know you'd have cracked straight on, but that's Anne Widdecombe there. Thank you very, very much. Right, coming up. After Sky News star Kay Burley faces criticism for her controversial comments on Israel made live on air, I speak to Israeli government spokesperson Eylon Levy. This clip went viral. It went absolutely viral. I'll play it for you in a little bit. He made mincemeat of Kay Burley. This clip got millions and millions and millions of views. He was trending on Twitter all day, all right? So we thought, we're going to lock him down, we're going to get his reaction, and that's exactly what we've done. He's hit back at Kay Burley and some anti-Israeli rhetoric being, demonstrated really by certain sections of the British media. But more than that, he's also been speaking about Gary Lineker and Owen Jones. So make sure you tune in for that. He does not hold back, that guy. But next, after infuriating revelations of British soldiers living in rat-infested porta cabins with woke activists seemingly unconcerned, does the left care more about illegal immigrants than its own people? I'm not mincing my words. I'll see you in a tick.
Evening, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. The wind's picking up out there, a blustery and cold day tomorrow, but most places will see some sunny spells. The reason for the change? A cold front is pushing south. Ahead of it, still quite mild. Behind it, very windy and much colder air arriving. So strong the winds, we actually have a Met Office yellow warning in place across Shetland, but across Orkney and the northeast of the mainland, very blustery with wintry showers coming in here. A little bit of snow is possible. A little bit of rain will clear away from England and Wales. Most places will be dry. Turning pretty chilly, but temperatures holding up in the southwest. But actually here during tomorrow, temperatures will tend to fall away. We'll start with cloud and still some patchy rain over maybe North Wales. Some showers just hitting parts of Aberdeenshire and then the east coast of England, especially Norfolk seeing the odd shower. But for most places, it's dry. For many, it'll be fine and sunny, but it ain't going to be warm with temperatures in single figures. A chilly day and feeling particularly cold in the east with this brisk wind. That wind will only slowly ease during Saturday, but it should ease away, as will any showers just hitting the eastern side of England. And for most, Saturday is also set fair. Yes, there'll be a frosty start, but then plenty of autumn sunshine, lifting the temperatures to between 4 and 8 Celsius. A chilly one ahead. Goodbye.
is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like? I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. This is Patrick Christys Tonight. Riots on the streets of Dublin after children were stabbed. People are saying enough is enough, but what's really gone on there? We'll have the latest. An army of human rights lawyers and fanatics are desperate to stop illegal migrants being housed on a barge. But we have members of our actual army living in shipping containers because their barracks is infested with rats. Has this country lost its flipping mind? And the man who made mincemeat of Kay Burley, Israeli government spokesman Elon Levy, joins me, and he's got a few words for Gary Lineker and Owen Jones as well.
The outrageous accusation, and I'm torn between wondering whether it's by people who are too stupid to open a dictionary and read the definition or a question of projection.
Yeah, and of course, we'll be joined down under with Ben Leo for the latest reaction to Nigel in the Jungle. I've certainly got a few questions about that hat. Now, I will have all of your front pages at 10:30 in the most entertaining newspaper review you will get anywhere on the telly. That's a promise. And getting ready to kick off on the sofa are Britain's best columnist, Alison Pearson, luscious Lord Bailey, and the amazing Amy Nicole Turner. You're on telly, Sean. This is Patrick Christys Tonight, and it's live. Always live. Now, your politicians have let you down, OK, but I won't. Keep your views on net migration coming into me. GBviews at gbnews.com. It's at GBnews on Twitter. I will see you after your headlines.
I'm Theo Chikomba in the GB newsroom. There are calls for calm as protesters clash with police after 3 children and a woman were stabbed in Dublin. Our reporter Doogie Beattie has more.
There's been a lot of criminal damage done on shops. There is also toilets burnt, a police car burnt, but the police are coming up the street and they're forcing them up as they go, trying to retake ground, and batons are drawn, and we must say that the things through the night here are getting heavier and heavier. This all started off at about 1:30 today when a young girl was stabbed along with 2 other children and a woman. And this has been brewing in Dublin for some time. Locals in this city are very much against the massive amount of immigration that has come in here, and they are now seen to be showing their frustration.
13 hostages held by Hamas are due to be released tomorrow. A spokesperson from the Qatar Foreign Ministry said the first group of civilians will be released at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, with the truce due to start at 7 a.m. local time. Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Forces said they killed a commander of the Hamas naval forces in Khan Yunis. Officers are appealing for dashcam footage following a crash that killed 4 teenagers in North Wales. Jevon Hurst, Harvey Owen, Wilf Fitchett and Hugo Morris were on a camping trip in North Wales. Their bodies were recovered on Tuesday after a car was found overturned and partially submerged in water. North Wales Police says it appears to have been a tragic accident. Police are asking anyone who has been travelling on the A4085 in Gwynedd between Sunday and Tuesday for information. Downing Street says more measures could be introduced to curb net migration. It comes as new figures showed that legal immigration to the UK hit a new record of 745,000 in the year to December. Most estimates suggest immigration is now slowing, while the number of people leaving the UK is going up. Energy bills are expected to rise after the energy regulator announced a 5% increase to the price cap. From January, the average household will now pay around £94 more over the course of a year. Ofgem says the increase is mostly driven by market instability and global events. The Prince of Wales took part in the mock assault in Salisbury Plain earlier. Prince William threw smoke grenades from a Warrior armoured vehicle as he joined a simulated attack on an enemy position. The exercise formed part of the future King's first visit to the 1st Battalion of the Mercian Regiment as their Chief Colonel-in-Chief. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio, on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back to Patrick.
On the day that it's emerged that we've got a net migration figure of around 672,000 and last year's figure has magically been rounded up to 745,000, it turns out we've moved serving military heroes out of a rat-infested barracks and into shipping containers. We have people who fight and die for this country living in a 15-foot by 6-foot wide prison because we've had to move them out of accommodation where rodents could bite them in the night. This country has lost its flipping mind. The equivalent of the entire population of Manchester, plus about another 120,000 people net this year, can be welcomed in. We can find room for all of these people. Oh, and by the way, if you've got a problem with those numbers, then you're a bigot. And if you've got a problem with the 745,000 we welcomed last year, you must be an even bigger bigot. And this isn't just now legal migration, OK? The reason why I know this country has lost its flipping mind is the way we treat illegal migrants compared to our military heroes. Where are the human rights lawyers for our military personnel? Where are Just Stop Oil blocking a bus carrying young men prepared to fight for Britain into shipping containers? Where are the bleeding heart liberals? Where's the outrage, apart from on this sofa right now? Earlier this year, I went to Ealing to report on ordinary Brits living in shipping containers. Here's what some of them look like on the inside and the outside as well. These are the same size or bigger, by the way, than the ones that we're putting members of our armed forces in. If it is inhumane and cruel and unusual punishment to house someone who has illegally entered Britain in a hotel or a barge with a gym, a basketball court, an on-site medical facility, the ability to come and go as you please, a canteen and a computer room, then surely it is inhumane to house someone who was born and bred here, has or is prepared to suffer the horrors of war for king and country in even worse accommodation. People on the Bibby Stockholm have better facilities and more freedom than some members of our armed forces. Let that sink in. And we have an entire section of the media, hundreds of politicians, goodness knows how many charities, a small army of human rights lawyers, some of them who were found to be taking bribes to lie about asylum claims, and one bunch of weird environmental loons all teaming up to fight their corner. Could you imagine how quickly this problem would be sorted if those high and mighty moral bastions of virtue decided to actually go into bat for the people prepared to die to save their lives? Whistleblowers speaking to the Mail said We don't let asylum seekers stay in places like this, so why the hell do we do it to our own troops who risk their lives? We're a very, very busy unit and we perform in a high standard across the globe. It's then a kick in the teeth to come back and live in squalor. The rooms are tiny, you can't put a TV in there. I mean, for me, this is just bias. It's actually reverse racism. It's all right for working-class British lads to be sent into battle, suffer the trauma of war, and then come home to a rat-infested room or a shipping container, but it's a complete outrage when all the nice hotels are too full, so we have to put illegal migrants on a refurbished barge instead. Look, I'll say it again, this country has lost its flipping mind. But to respond to me now, I'm joined again by Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, Conservative peer Lord Bailey, author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Alison, it just winds me right up, this, in case you couldn't tell.
I can tell, yes, lost our flipping mind. Start by saying squaddies are the least whinging people in the United Kingdom. So if they're complaining about their accommodation, then it is pretty poor. And I think I agree with you, Patrick, which is that if we are paying £8 million a day to put illegal migrants, aka asylum seekers, into 3- and 4-star hotels, then something's gone very, very wrong. But as you say, the asylum seekers have got an army of human rights lawyers saying that they can't possibly be put in cramped accommodation without, you know, Kayleys and discos and English language classes. But yeah, very different standards, double standard applied to our soldiers, and it is shameful.
If I did a press release that was sent out to everyone in the media, Amy, and said the exact same story, but you changed the people involved with it. So I said, we're going to put asylum seekers in this accommodation, or we're going to put squaddies in this situation. The media would turn up to the one involving the asylum seekers, wouldn't it?
Well, unfortunately, this is what you get after successive governments underfunding the Ministry of Defence, who are ultimately responsible for this. And it actually took a bleeding heart Liberal to bring this up in the Commons, Liberal Democrat Helen Morgan, to raise concerns about these living conditions. Now, I think it's frankly manipulative of you to put this frame it in opposition to the living conditions of migrants. Why is it necessary? Why can't we care about both of those things simultaneously and as passionately?
But we don't, though, do we?
This has only just come up. The government have been ignoring Helen Morgan. She's been standing up in the Commons week after week.
Well,
this ultimately comes down to the Ministry of Defence underfunding this living conditions. No one's happy with these living conditions. But do not compare to how unhappy we are with the living conditions of migrants. They're completely two different things going on.
I would argue that they are two different things, Sean.
It's just divisive to do that, and you know it is.
I hasten to disagree with Amy, because the point is...
That would be so unlike you.
How many people in the political world, in the legal world, were concerned about the squaddies? Let's be very clear. The conditions they're living in are absolutely disgusting.
It's your government's fault.
The government has failed. I'll say it again, the government has failed. But so is the whole political firmament. Because if we can support groups of people before we support our armed services, we need to ask ourselves some serious questions. The only reason we're in the position to support these other people is because of the rights and freedoms that those armed services have bought for us over the years. And so that's why it's an absolute disgrace. And the second thing as well, the government, and I say the government, has found money for all manner of madness. This should have been at the top of their list. So whoever's responsible is, from the Secretary of State for Defence downwards, is guilty of a massive failure. And it should put it right instantly.
Yeah, Alison, for me, it's this question of priorities and this really weird mindset that people are in. You know, just stop oil. On paper, well, they just want to stop oil, right? But they don't. They want to stop the child migrant crisis as well. They want to free Palestine. They want to do all of this stuff. No one's ever there for the people who are willing to literally die for this country. In my view, I just don't understand the mindset of... And the media backs them up. The human rights lawyers back them up. There's a ready-made selection, a smorgasbord of people in Parliament ready to go into bat for the utter disgrace of sticking someone who's come here illegally on a barge, but then you've got people who have maybe done tours of wherever, living in shipping containers.
But that's what we've been talking about this evening, Patrick, isn't it? Is that there is this complete double standard. So when white working-class people, which many squaddies are, not all, there are obviously people from different communities, you know, they're racist, that's it. They're the lowest of the low. And asylum seekers have a sort of halo of virtue around them. What we actually know at the moment is that asylum seekers, the government is processing asylum seekers to this country at a huge rate, much higher acceptance rate than France France or other European countries. And why is that happening? Because they want to get them off the books so that they look like they've cleared the backlog. So yeah, I mean it is, but the certain category of person, white working class people mainly in this country, they are the bottom of the pile, and they are they're some of the best people in our country.
Now look, we're going to return to, well, it's kind of all rolled into one, isn't it, when it comes to the net migration figures and all of this, because we're going to be doing our paper review at past. We'll bring you those headlines, bang on the dot. I just want to go quickly to the Ministry of Defence spokesperson. Has come out and said, no, there's no outstanding pest control issues, despite what is being said. Clive Barracks, any reports are dealt with as quickly as possible. They say they're committed to ensuring that our service personnel have the high-quality accommodation they rightly deserve.
Do you know who has that as a policy pledge in the last manifesto? Labour.
Right, OK. Right, now, the latest from Dublin tonight, yes, the police have blamed a complete hooligan lunatic faction driven by far-right ideology, their words, for violent protests that have broken out just hours after a man stabbed a woman and 3 young children outside a school in Ireland's capital city. Protesters have been letting off flares, attacked officers with fireworks, set a car on fire as riot police attempt to hold back the crowd from the city centre. There are also unconfirmed reports online that a Holiday Inn hotel that has housed migrants previously has reportedly been set on fire by the protesters. Here's some clips. Yeah, people out on the streets there due to some of the unconfirmed rumours about the individual believed to be involved. We'll keep you updated on that situation in Dublin tonight. Coming up, I bring you the most lively and informative press preview anywhere in the country. Tonight's press pack analyse all of tomorrow's biggest headlines, and we'll also cross down under to get the live verdict from Nigel's 5th day in the jungle. But next, Israeli government spokesman Eylon Levy joins me. He roasted Sky News presenter Kay Burley earlier today. That clip went viral, so we thought we've got to get him on, and we've done it. He's got a few words for Gary Lineker and Owen Jones too. Trust me, this guy kicks off, and he's here in a sec.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Fleet Street legend Kelvin Mackenzie joins me for a spirited review of tomorrow's newspaper front pages soon. But before that, tomorrow sees the start of the Israel-Hamas hostage deal. 50 of the kidnapped Israeli civilians being sent home in return for 150 Palestinian prisoners. And Sky News presenter Kay Burley has sparked outrage after a car crash interview with Israeli government spokesman Elon Levy. All day, the shocking clip has been going viral on social media. I wanted to speak to the man at the centre of the storm myself. You'll shortly see that extraordinary moment that he had with Kay Burley. But first, I asked Mr Levy for an update, an important update, I think, on the Israeli hostage situation.
This is heartbreaking. We're talking about 240 hostages, including 30 children, who have been held in a dark tunnel now by the terrorists who massacred and raped their way through these people's communities on October 7th. And every minute that Hamas continues to hold our hostages in the dark and keep their families in the dark is an ongoing crime against humanity. Now, we're doing everything we can to get them home. There is a deal in place to secure the release of the first 50 hostages. We're starting with the women and children, and we hope to continue and bring home all of the hostages, the men and the women, the old and the young, the soldiers and the civilians. We're committed to leave no one behind in the Gaza Strip.
What have you made of the British media coverage from what you've seen of it so far?
Look, it really depends. And as a government spokesman, it's not my job to give a telling off to specific media outlets. But I think it's fair to say Israel hasn't been given a fair shake in this conflict. I've done about 150 interviews, television and radio, since this war began, and sometimes I'm really flabbergasted by the questions I get. We're trying to present our side of the story. We're explaining why we're having to fight this awful war. We're telling the truth about the October 7th massacre. We're talking about the lengths that we are going to bring our stolen children back. And sometimes, no matter what facts we present, there are people who will always twist it in a way that makes Israel out to be the baddies, in a way that really requires intellectual somersaults and gymnastics to try to pull that off. But we have to continue telling the story, why we are fighting this war, the war that Hamas declared on us with the October 7th massacre, and why we have no choice but to win, because we can't go back to a world in which the terrorists just over the border, the army of terror just over the border in the Gaza Strip, can hurt our people ever again.
I think you were alluding a little bit to an interview with Kay Burley earlier today.
I was speaking to a hostage negotiator this morning. He made the comparison between the 50 hostages that Hamas has promised to release, as opposed to the 150 prisoners that are Palestinians that Israel has said that it will release. And he made the comparison between the numbers and the fact that, does Israel not think that Palestinian lives are valued as highly as Israeli lives?
That is an astonishing accusation.
How did that make you feel at the time?
Flabbergasted, really. I've given many interviews, and that was the first question that left my jaw on the floor. The idea that since Israel is releasing 150 Palestinian prisoners convicted of violent offenses in exchange for 50 hostages, that somehow means that we care less about Palestinian lives because that is the deal that we have agreed to. Obviously, if we could do a one-for-one swap, that would be preferable. Obviously, if we could get our innocent hostages back for free, all 250 of them, 50 days ago, nearly 50 days ago, that would have been preferable. So the idea that you take Israel's willingness to release people who have been convicted of violent offenses in order to get innocent children who've been held in a tunnel nearly 50 days ago, and to turn that somehow into a narrative of dehumanization against Israel, as if that somehow is a reflection that we are the ones missing a moral compass. Really, I think insinuations like that are outrageous. It is Hamas that devalues lives. It is Hamas that devalues Israeli lives and Palestinian lives, as we see from the reckless way that they've been trying to use innocent Palestinian civilians as human shields in this war, and as you can see from Israel's efforts to get them out of harm's way so that we can target the monsters who perpetrated that horrific, barbaric massacre on October 7th.
I've been very surprised by a lot of the reaction of certain prominent figures, Gary Lineker, the footballer, former footballer, being one of them, who recently shared a tweet from a prominent left-wing commentator in this country, Owen Jones, which basically was an interview he did with somebody saying that what Israel was engaging in was a textbook genocide.
Because the intent is expressed so explicitly, so directly, in such unashamed ways, and it's continued to be expressed in this way, then I do think that what we're seeing in front of our eyes is a textbook case of genocide.
Gary Lineker, of course, works for the BBC as well. I mean, again, what do you make when you see people, prominent people, going out of their way to tweet something like that, under the guise, by the way, of trying to remain neutral? I'm not expressing a view, I'm just saying you should have a look at this.
It's a really outrageous accusation, and I'm torn between wondering whether it's by people who are too stupid to open a dictionary and read the definition, or a question of projection. Because an act of genocide did take place on October 7th, when Hamas death squads invaded southern Israel and murdered everyone they saw as brutally as possible, when they burned people, beheaded people, tortured them, mutilated them, parents in front of their children, children in front of their parents, when they committed acts of barbaric rape. That was a campaign of systematic extermination by Hamas's army of terror, which tells us that it wants to perpetrate another October 7th and another October 7th and a million October 7ths, as many as it takes to murder every man, woman, child in our country. And in response to that, we're fighting a war to target the monsters who did that, going blue in the face, trying to get civilians out of harm's way, despite Hamas's efforts to embed itself in civilian areas in clear violation of humanitarian law. So to take the suffering and the trauma that we have suffered, the deadliest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, and to somehow turn that against us and turn us into the villains, really shows an atrocious degree of total moral bankruptcy.
Bosh, I think, is the best way of saying what he said there. Elon Levy, their spokesman for the Israeli government. We reached out to Gary Lineker's representatives for comment, but shockingly, we are yet to hear back. Coming up, Fleet Street legend Kelvin MacKenzie joins me live in the studio to tuck into tomorrow's front pages. But next, the UK's most entertaining paper review. You will not be bored as my panel of news gurus choose through the latest headlines hot off the press, and of course, the breaking news from inside the jungle. And we will have the latest from Dublin, where it is absolutely kicking off. See you in 3.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I've got the front pages here, but let's cross to Australia now, where our reporter Ben Leo is beachside for the inside track on another eventful day for Nigel down under. Ben.
Yeah, hi Patrick, good evening. Another cracking show just ended. Tony Bellew, the former pro boxer, and Frankie Dettori, 2 new campmates in the mix tonight. They both led 2 teams. The camp was divided in half, a series of challenges which saw Nigel get stuck into basically a box where he had animal organs thrown all over him, fish slime and whatever else. Unfortunately, Nigel's team lost, which meant he's in the away camp, which is a downgraded 1-star camp. So no proper bed, no proper food and no luxuries like the home team have got. I suppose the highlight of the show, unfortunately, I'm going to have to bring you this, was another showing of Nigel's backside and some rather hilarious pictures of him in the bath scrubbing himself. Take a look at this.
That's a sight. That's all right. Hi, babe. I just see something I've never thought I'd see.
What have you seen now?
Bare ass.
I've seen it on the first day. Considering he's nearly 60, it ain't too bad.
He looks good, doesn't he? Nice little bum.
Lovely.
Good. Feeling happier today?
Well, we've all had a peek at your bottom.
Is that right?
That is right.
That's not too bad, is it?
It's not too bad, mate.
Well, there you go.
I tell you what, it's not too bad.
What's not too bad?
Nigel's bottom.
Oh.
Oh, my God. Farage was naked again.
There's a lot of nakedness from him, isn't
You know,
there?
the only thing Nigel Farage loves more than being naked is having a big election.
You did say election, didn't you?
I did. Yes, I did.
Few.
Definitely.
Few.
Patrick, I don't know what you guys are doing to me. I'm meant to be a serious journalist. I've travelled the world, I've interviewed prime ministers, royalty, and now you want me to give an assessment of Nigel's backside. Well, here it is. He's not in bad shape, is he? And I think, actually, it shows that he doesn't give a damn what people think, just like his politics. He stays true to himself, and that's quite a noble characteristic. So fair play to Nigel. What's your assessment, Patrick, of his bath time scene?
Absolutely cracking. Yeah, 100%. It really is. Ben, just before I let you get going, what's the story with that hat, mate?
What's the story on what, sorry, Patrick?
With your hat.
Oh, it's my cameraman's. He in the back of his van. Actually, to be honest, a lot of locals have been giving me weird looks. Who's this weird Brit on the beach? So there we go. It's off. If the viewers want it back again, let me know. But yeah, there we go.
All right, look, Ben, you're an absolute legend. Thank you very much, mate. Great to see you. Take care. Try not to enjoy yourself too much on the Gold Coast. Now, reaction from my panel, Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, Conservative peer Lord Bailey, author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Alison, Nigel's house.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that. You know what he is doing? He's covering himself in bubble bath, but he's covering himself in glory in there. I've been watching. He's been doing really well. He's the camp fusspot. He is tidying up. He's telling them all not to leave all the food out overnight. And he's really getting his message across. He's actually injecting quite a lot of interesting politics into it.
Lord Bailey, what do you think of Nigel Farage constantly getting his kit off?
Well, he's in good shape for a man of his age. And look, Nigel is I think, is quite a likeable character. I think that's coming across. He's very sure about what he believes and he's letting people know. And look, he's confident. He's as with his politics, he's saying, this is me, take a look.
Yeah, I mean, he's bearing all. I mean, no one could accuse him of not, going the extra mile, I suppose, in that sense.
It's good. He's dedicated to his hygiene because there's nothing worse than having to bath in your swimwear. So he's just embracing the reality that he just wants to have a nice, clean time in camp. Brilliant, fine.
Yeah, I mean...
But I don't know about all this, great bod, really? I mean, can I... Actually, the other day you called a Victoria's Secret model someone that had been wrapped around a lamppost, so I'm allowed to...
You don't need to go raking things up just because you dropped a clanger now.
I was like, we can't body shame, we can't body shame.
I said nothing there, and you just created a storm out of that. Anyway, right, OK, I think that is possibly enough for now about Nigel Farage's backside, although no doubt we'll return to it. I want to bring you some of tomorrow's news tonight now, in the most entertaining paper review anywhere on telly. The very first front pages have just been delivered for my press pack. Let's see what's on them, shall we? Here we go. The Mirror. Make it stop. Economy. Households are going to be 1,900 quid poorer. Migration, Labour, Tory policy has been a total failure. The Bills, they talk about COVID as well. They're breaking Britain. That's The Mirror. We go to The Independent. Tories at war over slap-in-face record migration numbers. PM feels heat from Suella Braverman and right-wing MPs as net migration to UK triples to 745,000. Yeah, I mean, it's completely overshadowed the tax cut stuff, hasn't it? Which arguably weren't that great anyway. Interesting picture story here, really interesting picture story. This hero crane driver who managed to hoist a workman to safety from a tower block inferno. I whizzed over to the Metro. Yeah, they've gone for this as well. I mean, it's an incredibly strong picture story, this. Winches from death. A builder stranded on a burning 16-storey office building was rescued. That person deserves a knighthood. That's it. There we go.
Ooh,
see, so
exactly.
Wow. So this is an office block in Reading, 16 storeys, that bit of it. And bloke trapped on the roof. If you can just about make him out there, yeah. Anyway, crane driver. Down the crane driver comes. This guy's got to try and get in it. You can imagine the searing heat. Look at the inferno.
Oh, God.
Look at the inferno. Gets him. Manages to get him just as the smoke and the flames engulf the side of the building, hoists him to safety. Goodness me, there are not enough pints in the world to make up for what you've just done now. Whiz you over to the Daily Express. We'll get a reaction on that. Whiz you over to the Daily Express. Failure to halt migration is slap in the face for the public, they say. They've got an exclusive from Sir Michael Caine and Dame Judi Dench, two people who I think Daily Express readers, of course, will love. And the Eye. Cabinet battle on UK's migrant care workers. Yeah, this is interesting because they're talking about whether or not they're going to have a visa crackdown for care workers. Are we just, fussing around the edges, fiddling while Rome burns, I suppose you could say. So there we go. Those are your front pages. All right, more on all of those now and a little bit later on as well. But I am joined by my press pack. So they're going to be getting stuck right into this. But can I just actually delve into a story that belongs to you, Alison?
Yes.
Because you've got something for people tomorrow in The Telegraph. What is it?
Yeah, Geert Wilders, who is a far-right, he genuinely is a far-right politician in the Netherlands, has stormed to a victory in the general election in the Netherlands and has caused a huge amount of sort of shock and surprise. But anyone who's been following the politics of that country, Patrick, will know that migration has been looming large, causing a lot of consternation, and he has capitalised on that, particularly since the Hamas attacks and the pro-Palestine marches. So he's now left behind all the kind of mainstream people, and this is really based on asylum seekers. Geert Wilders has a very hard line. He wants to shut mosques, ban Muslim immigration altogether. So very far-right person, but really doing incredibly well in the Netherlands. And of course, we're seeing that across the continent. And what I'm writing about in my piece is, are we, with all the tensions building here, are we going to have a party of the far right and a leader like that? And the issue here, Patrick, that I'm really talking about is that people who are not far right, but who have legitimate concerns, none of the mainstream parties, certainly not in our country and in the Netherlands, were not addressing the legitimate concerns about immigration and social cohesion. So they are flocking to more far right leaders.
OK, well, so people can get that full unabridged version in the Telegraph tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's always well worth a read, obviously. Lord Bailey, how would you respond to that, then?
I think it's right. You see Geert Wilders, he's been coming for a long time, and a little while ago, so if you go back 5 or 10 years, he was treated as if he was a lunatic, and people responded to him in that way. But because Liberals are constantly telling people you're far right, not listening, they've allowed him to wander into the centre, and he's won. Now, it feels like that couldn't happen here, but it also felt like it couldn't happen in the Netherlands, and it has. And we've talked about immigration, and the government has failed on the figures. But what's interesting is, what would the Labour Party do? Whenever we talk about this, I always ask, where's Keir Starmer? Because he and his bunch are the chief people at telling people they're from the right, and they're not listening to poor communities who are worried about their incomes, about their access to public services. And if he doesn't listen to them, we could get into a place where racial tension grows. And I'd say this now, I was born and raised in this country. Racial tension, to me, is at the highest it's ever been for quite some time.
Wow. Yeah, I'm just going to read out, Amy, I'll go to you, but I'll just read out some of the manifesto, right, from this guy. Asylum seekers feast on delightful free cruise ship buffets while Dutch families have to cut back on groceries. Immediate halt to development aid, a, quotes, Netherlands first approach, including leaving the EU. Proposes a ban on Islamic schools, Qurans and mosques. Headscarves would be banned from government buildings. He obviously then goes, the Netherlands is not an Islamic country. He toned down his anti-Islam message during campaigning, saying that he put some of his stronger views in the freezer. It's his 6th election. Lord Bailey is right. You know, they should have seen this guy coming.
I think as long as we continue to blame migrants for governments' failings and inflame situations, and there is inflation and poverty in countries, increasing poverty, and we continue to avoid the truth, which is that the economics are wrong, that the government policy is wrong, and we continue to say it's because of migration, that's what's going to happen here. I cannot believe that a secular country like we're talking about this raises massive serious concerns about religious freedom. Can you imagine something like this here? Somebody leads the country saying they want to ban mosques.
But this
is sickening.
Amy, this is the point I want to make.
How can this not make you furious?
It may well make me furious. Everybody does. I'm a church-going Christian. It would make me furious. I grew up in a very big Muslim community. But the point I'm trying to make is, Liberals talk about people who feel this way as if they're silly fools, and they won't listen to people who have legitimate concerns. And if a Liberal won't listen to you, and this is your only alternative, this is where you end up.
In the Netherlands, the Netherlands only has a population of 17 million people, and they had last year 485,000 immigrants coming in. That's a big chunk of the population. People do not want this vast demographic change happening so quickly.
But why?
And Sean is right. Why? Because the country can't accommodate it. And Wilders has said, let's put the Dutch first for once. And I bet you that would resonate in our country. Let's put the British
That
first
would be the
for once.
same
A lot
reasoning.
of people here, Amy, feel overlooked. As
And they
Sean
absolutely are overlooked, but that has precisely nothing to do with immigration.
It does.
Okay. Well, we're on the clock, people. We're on the clock. But thank you very much. Good stuff. Now, coming up, Sadiq Khan wants to introduce rent freezes in the capital, but are rent controls a damaging left-wing fantasy? My panel will thrash that out. That's tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But first, Fleet Street icon Kelvin MacKenzie joins me live for some more reaction to tomorrow's front pages. I've got another Nigel clip. Are we doing this now or... Oh, we're keeping you on the hook. I wonder whether or not this one involves his bare bottom. Yeah, stay tuned for all of the reaction. See you in a tick.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, here we go, because Kelvin MacKenzie is going to be talking about all of the latest front pages. A couple more, yes, there we go. A couple more have just landed in my lap here. Kelvin, we're going to start with your old one, The Sun. There we go. So, quick step, Danny. Rugby bad boy Danny Cipriani joins Christmas Strictly, and he's already cozying up to a dancer. Well, there we go. OK, all right. 9 days after his marriage split. Well, I wonder if what's the reality there? 745,000 record level of migrants. I'm just going to show people the Telegraph before we get stuck into these, Kelvin. Daily Telegraph, cabinet pressure on Rishi Sunak to slash migration. Snap election speculation as Treasury mulls early budget. They've got Geert Wilders on the front as well, and some stuff about the Israel-Hamas alleged ceasefire. Right, and stay tuned, because in a second we've got no more Nigel in the jungle. But Kelvin, yeah, I mean, what do you want to start off with there?
Well, the most important thing is the net migration issue. And Fraser Nelson has done a bit of research which shows that 4,000 Britons per day apply for sickness benefit, while we allow in 3,000 new arrivals from predominantly India, Nigeria, Pakistan. That's what happened last year. Now, so actually, can somebody tell me why 4,000 of our people applying for sickness benefit every day? Why is that happening? So I'm grateful to Fraser Nelson for putting these facts out. And the other issue that I've seen is that there's been a slight bounce in the Tory honestly, they're basically done for. But why should you be surprised? Anybody who is at the bottom of the pay pile now makes $11.44 an hour, which means that they will earn $25,000 a year. Fantastic. Anybody who's living off pension has just seen an 8.6 rise. Forget about NI. Forget about taxation. Ordinary people actually really benefited, and the trouble is that the argument has been hijacked by people who earn, 78,000, 80,000. They forget about the majority who don't.
OK. The story you're referring to there is on the inside of The Times, and it's got the headline, Benefit Rise, a surprise vote winner as Tories climb by 4 points. So that's the very, very little bump in the polls that Jeremy Hunt's budget has got. Kelvin, I'm going to play a clip now, OK, of Nigel Farage undergoing his latest trial down under, and then I'll get your reaction. Go on.
I've seen it.
That's awful.
Now let's just drop that one. That is pretty smelly. Nigel, Grace, Nick, poor Nick, and Marvin.
So close, Marvin. So close.
I'm afraid you are the losing team.
Yeah, grief. Kelvin, what do you make of Nigel's moments in the jungle so far?
Well, I've just watched it, actually, and the explosion between him and Bella Rose I found very disturbing, personally, and I wondered whether she'd been put in by ITV in order to create that very, what I thought was very uncomfortable television for what is a fantastic television franchise, and instead of that turned into a difficult and rather nasty explosion by her towards him, basically saying, black people don't like you. Supposing she had said back to it, well, white people don't like you. Can you imagine what kind of row there was? But thanks to Nigel keeping his cool and basically saying we've got nothing to talk to each other about, actually it all went off reasonably well. But I think ITV's director of television and even the CEO should come on and explain why this influencer was put in there when they knew full well that would lead to a racial explosion. I think it's an absolute disgrace, and the cynicism is fantastic.
I think what Nigel is doing is he's pushing back on stuff very gently by saying very basic things like, OK, so how many people is too many people to have in a quick succession? Which is basically really the conversation about immigration, especially in light of today's, soon-to-be record net migration numbers when they inevitably bump them up again. And you can tell that a lot of people, I think especially younger people, haven't actually thought about that. They haven't actually thought about the specifics. It's like someone has thrown a blanket over them and said, immigration good, and then that's it.
Well, they haven't got a proper stake in society yet, have they? I mean, I'm not against it. I admire the young and all the bloody rest of it. But the truth about the matter is they don't own houses. They aren't in their 40s and potentially lose their jobs to people coming from the outside. We are in a difficult place. And I am sure that if we had a Mr. Wilder around right now, there would be a lot of tension in the air. And actually, I often wonder whether if the Reform Party was a bit tougher on the Muslim exclusion of integration, then I honestly think that actually the Reform Party would pass the Conservative Party. In fact, not only do I think it, I'm absolutely sure the party that is going to destroy the Conservatives is not Labour. It's going to be the votes that go to Reform. It's a very dangerous area, and Rishi should get real.
Well, this ties into a heck of a lot of the front pages right now. The Eye, Cabinet battle on UK's migration, care workers, yeah, fine, but also Cabinet pressure in the Telegraph, Sunak to slash immigration, failure to halt migration is a slap in the face of the public, the Express, so bang, 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 and yeah, Kelvin, it's going to be big when Nigel gets out. We'll have to see what his political ambitions are, but Kelvin Mackenzie, thank you very much, always an absolute superstar. Kelvin Mackenzie, the former editor of The Sun. Now, it's time to reveal today's greatest Briton and Union jackass. Alison, who is your greatest Briton?
it's going to be Mr. Nigel Farage and his charming posterior, but also particularly not just the bum note, but for putting Nella Rose straight in the jungle about immigration and conducting himself with great fairness and saying, let's agree to disagree.
Funny you should mention that.
Right. So sorry, all the tea is coming out now. So basically...
But this is what I was saying to you.
Apparently you're anti-immigrants.
Who told you that?
Oh, the internet.
Oh, well, there we are, then. It must be true. It must be true.
It must be.
It must be true.
Yeah, OK, all right, Sean.
My greatest Britain is the Chancellor, for he threw a bung to the army, gave 10 million to say, look, we're going to do better for you. I think it's a start. It's not enough. But for the Chancellor to recognise him in the autumn statement is a very good thing, because the armed forces, particularly the army, need more. We've had a recruitment it's been tough to recruit, and it's because there isn't enough going to those boys at the front line and girls.
Yeah, of course. Now, on the inside of the Times, they might be inclined to agree. The 4-point bump in the polls. There we go. Amy, who's your greatest Britain?
Well, on the flip side, I've gone with an award-winning journalist. She's called Holly Ann Brooks. She's provided some expert analysis on the dangerous consequences that Jeremy Hunt's welfare cuts will have on the disabled. The cuts are inhumane, as she points out, and the NHS needs so much more investment after 13 years of Tory rule, and she highlights this particularly well. So I recommend you go read her articles and listen to her broadcasts.
No, absolutely. No, thank you for bringing that up. And I must say, from what I have heard, it's always a tremendous when she's doing her writing and also, like you said there, the audio stuff as well. My winner, though, in sharp contrast, it must be said, is Nigel Farage. Today's greatest Britain is Nigel Farage, and we've just about got time for the Union Jackass. Alice.
It's got to be the Conservative Party for promising in many manifestos to the British people that they would get overall immigration down, and we now have the highest level of immigration for 1,500 years.
Very quick, Sean.
Mine is Sadiq Khan for prattling on about rent controls, knowing the best way to destroy cities, bombs, and the second best way is rent control. It will mean that rents go up and there'll be less properties available.
Oh, OK. Go on, Amy.
Suella Braverman, because she's having a whinge about migration numbers whilst forgetting she was Home Secretary.
OK, all right. The winner of today's Union Jackass, and I think a lot of people could have seen this coming, it is the Conservative
sorry, Sean.
Party. It is. Look, it is. I mean, you know, I can only play the cards I'm dealt, and sorry, Sean, but it's not been a great day, has it?
I love it that you've all elevated me to the Prime Minister. It's not my Conservative Party.
It's a matter of time, the way that you're the only one left.
If Sean was in charge, it would be much better.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
All right,
oh, yes.
Thank you very, very much, my wonderful panel. Really great stuff tonight. Thank you for everybody who's been watching, who's been tuning in. It's been a rip-roaring show. We've dealt with the net migration figures. We've taken you over to Dublin as well, where we will be monitoring that situation here on GB News. Very, very concerning stuff. And we spoke to the Israeli spokesperson who went viral after making mincemeat out of Kate Burley earlier on. If you haven't seen all of that, watch it back on YouTube. I'll see you tomorrow at 9. Mwah.
Evening, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. The wind's picking up out there, a blustery and cold day tomorrow, but most places will see some sunny spells. The reason for the change? A cold front is pushing south. Ahead of it, still quite mild. Behind it, very windy and much colder air arriving. So strong the winds, we actually have a Met Office yellow warning in place across Shetland, but across Orkney and the northeast of the mainland, very blustery with wintry showers coming in here. A little bit of snow is possible. A little bit of rain will clear away from England and Wales. Most places will be dry. Turning pretty chilly, but temperatures holding up in the southwest. But actually here during tomorrow, temperatures will tend to fall away. We'll start with cloud and still some patchy rain over maybe North Wales. Some showers just hitting parts of Aberdeenshire and then the east coast of England, especially Norfolk seeing the odd shower. But for most places, it's dry. For many, it'll be fine and sunny, but it ain't going to be warm with temperatures in single figures. A chilly day and feeling particularly cold in the east with this brisk wind. That wind will only slowly ease during Saturday, but it should ease away, as will any showers just hitting the eastern side of England. And for most, Saturday is also set fair. Yes, there'll be a frosty start, but then plenty of autumn sunshine, lifting the temperatures to between 4 and 8 Celsius. A chilly one ahead. Goodbye.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.